I always try to follow the strokes. Pretend I'm painting and following Picasso's brush strokes.
My name is Alexandra Morrison, and I'm the curatorial assistant for Picasso in Fontainebleau. Ani Avram and I started working together on this project November 2021. Ani had started the process of cleaning the work. We got to see the three musicians slowly come back to the surface.
You, like nobody else, become very intimate with the surface you're working on, with the painting you're working on. I just did it because it's going to be reframed. The way the strokes are, you can tell that they're smaller brushes. The way he paints always is a purpose of how you're going to have the layers come forward, go backwards.
We spent lots of time in front of the painting, but we also spent lots of time behind the painting. In a couple of those conversations, Ani and I started to really look closely at what was there on the stretcher. Three Musicians tells us so much about its life. So this is a story with many chapters. Begins in the summer of 1921, July 1st, Picasso and his wife, Olga Koklova Picasso, and their 5-month-old son, Paul, arrive in Fontainebleau. And immediately, it seems, Picasso sets to work. So the studio itself was in a garage next to this house. We knew that it was a fairly long, narrow space. We imagined Picasso was probably working during the day. We think that Picasso must have ordered a huge number of art supplies and had them delivered to the house. Among those art supplies would have been a roll of canvas from which he cut 3 pieces. 2 were about 6 feet wide. The third was a little bit wider, about 7 feet. That piece became MoMA's Three Musicians.
Why is it important to look at the back of a painting and what it's telling us?
It's basically a portrait of the painting's life after it leaves the artist's studio. And I think kind of the first place to start looking is this little inscription here, which we found together when we were really doing a lot of deep dives into how the painting was made, how it was stretched. We didn't know for sure how old the stretcher was. It's clearly very old, has lots of stickers and labels on it. But this really confirms that this is the original stretcher. And it reads 361 Chapuis, Coince, and then an address 4 Rue Crété. And that was where they operated.
So we know that Chapuis was an important reliner, a conservator reliner, that worked for many artists.
Early 1922, Chapuis had probably already put this canvas onto the stretcher. And then shortly after that, the painting is sold to Picasso's dealer, Paul Rosenberg, and a lot of the inscriptions we see here on the back relate to its life while it was with Paul Rosenberg. For me, some of the most interesting ones are these inventory numbers. Here you see PH 1087. The PH refers to its photo number. He photographed anything that passed through his hands, and that number basically allowed him, years later, to reconstruct his inventory from this period because he had lost a number of documents and archives when he left France during the Second World War.
Paul Rosenberg was Jewish, and he had already seen what happened to all of the German dealers in the wake of the First World War and how their stocks had been seized, and probably realized that anything he owned, his own personal collection, the stock of his gallery, could potentially be seized. He went to great lengths to protect anything that he had. It seems Rosenberg strategically sent out Picasso's Three Musicians out on this kind of world tour with the idea that if it were constantly moving, it would be protected. It seems the first time the work was exhibited to the public was in June 1926. Paul Rosenberg organized an exhibition at his gallery. In 1932, Picasso had a retrospective in Paris at the Galerie Georges Petit, which he himself curated. And there, for the first time, both versions of Three Musicians were on view. It's in October of the same year that the show travels and opens at the Kunsthaus Zurich.
Alfred Barr was the first director of the museum, so was a very important figure in the art field.
Barr was also very interested in this painting and its relationship to Philadelphia's version of Three Musicians. He wrote to Picasso and asked him outright, "Which one did you paint first?" To which Picasso responded, "I painted them simultaneously." Paul Rosenberg, who still had the painting in his possession in 1939, lent it to Alfred Barr's hugely important exhibition, Picasso, 40 Years of His Art. So even though now it's a work in MoMA's collection, we have a little trace of its life when it came in as a loan.
This is a very particular case in which you not only have all the labels and the history of exhibitions, but you have a stretcher that you know was the only one. It's over 100 years old. So that is very significant in a large painting like this.
The back of the painting really acts in a way like its passport. You know where the painting has been. It's been to New York. It's been to Buenos Aires. It's traveled to Amsterdam. It's traveled to Brussels and even to Connecticut. It also reminds us that an artwork moves through time and crisscrosses the globe thanks to a network of actors. I think in the history of modern art, there's this enduring idea of a lone genius, of an artist, unfettered, unbothered by anybody, creating paintings that go on to be masterpieces. That idea of the lone genius has been undone increasingly. And a work like this really shows you, even if it's a single artist who produces the work, there are so many other people who are involved in that painting's life.